Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not an attorney or a lawyer or a judge, but I was in county government it was county judge executive, sort of the county executive. My impressions of criminal justice reform were informed by my experience there as county executive, where the jail was the biggest expense in the county, and it does not create any revenue. And you see situations there that just don't make any sense. Like a Gulf War veteran who's serving 1 year. We house state inmates as well in the county jail. The state pays to keep them there. A Gulf War veteran, decorated, serving a year for non-child support. Okay, now that's despicable not to support your children, right? But how does that improve the situation? Now this man is a felon with a 1-year sentence. He's virtually unemployable. Mr. McGann, can you speak to that?
Well, that's crazy. I mean, right? I mean, we have a guy who is not paid his child support, so he's put in jail, which he then further cannot pay his child support. So, you know, and which goes back to one of the points I wanted to make, which is, first of all, a Gulf War veteran has been through a lot, probably has an underlying issue that needs dealing with, probably has a substance abuse issue as he tries to self-medicate on top of that. So we need to get to the core problem to help that person, so then he can then get employment and then pay his past due child support. So that's the first point. The second one is just, you know, past due child support is onerous on low-earning humans, people, returning citizens. It is preventing them from getting payroll jobs. It's incenting them to do under-the-table work. It's incenting them to do criminal activity. And because for a small portion of folks, they just can't afford to pay for themselves because of these issues, these wage garnishments. So, and it's not, and we, of course, we want people to pay, if absent fathers, we want them to pay for their children. There's no question about it. But there's a portion which get behind, and then it becomes too big of a mountain for them to climb on their own. And we just have to, and we're incenting behavior that we don't want. And the general problem is we have all these employers who have open jobs, and we have all these people who want to work at them, and we have these barriers in between. And we have to knock those barriers down.
Ms. Norton sort of covered this, but what role does expungement play in?
Well, we've had some success with some folks to go back and get past due child support eliminated. And we've thought a lot about this. For people who have younger children, you know, we have had some success in getting it reduced, or the payments reduced, not the total amounts reduced, because we want those fathers to pay. But for some people who are 60 and their kids are long gone, their grandparents, we're talking about mountains of past due child support.
Well, let me just be clear, and I want to move on to another topic. I'm not advocating non-support here. I'm just saying sometimes we do things that compound the problem and cause the children never to receive any support if we cause the father to be unemployable. I want to move on very quickly. I am the lead Republican sponsor on a bill with Congressman Bobby Scott called the Justice Safety Valve Act, which would give judges more discretion in applying the sentencing. In other words, discretion to override the mandatory minimums across the board. It occurs to me, listening to you, Judge Williams, that there's already sort of a safety valve in there that my colleagues here don't understand when they keep, it seems like every 2 or 3 months we pass another bill with a mandatory minimum in it. But they don't understand the prosecutor has discretion as well and may choose not to prosecute that particular crime because that mandatory minimum is in there. So by putting a mandatory minimum in there, is it possible that sometimes we cause certain crimes not to get prosecuted? You know, they might choose another one if they didn't think the mandatory minimum was appropriate. Can you speak to that, Judge Williams?
Yes, that's why I mentioned that all points of the system where discretion is utilized needs to be reviewed. Certainly, the safety valve is one mechanism to undercut some of the harshness associated with mandatory minimum sentences. But in addition to that, I would just like to see an equalization of the discretion and the authority, both for prosecutors as well as judges. And you're right, Congressman. prosecutors have a way to get around even the safety valve by charging or making some other decisions on prosecution that, again, would lessen that impact. So I would just like to see, again, a review of all of that legislation, all of those policies, so there could be more of an equal distribution so that judges can take into consideration a few more factors to make sure that appropriate sentences are handed down.
Just in closing here, I just want to say one other crazy thing I saw at the county jail, state jail level is public perception. People think, they feel good when they see inmates picking up trash on the side of the road. What they don't realize is they are not learning a vocation that's going to be transferable back into society. So even though that may score points with the public officials to have the inmates out there picking up trash, we might be doing society a better favor to teach them or to have them do tasks where there are employable skills that are being picked up. I'll just, Pastor, did you want to say something to that?
Yes, sir. I think you hitting on a vital point that the skill set that a person needs is not just what they can do with busy work, but what they can do to further their societal advantage. What I tell some of these young men is that your characteristics have a market advantage in the neighborhood that you're living in, but we need to help you transform your character. But they have skill sets that's beyond being at the bottom rung. One of the things I say to investors is don't ask these young men and young ladies how to be workers. Ask them